morning, we're going to kick things off by talking to you about board engagement, specifically focusing on board orientation as a tool to increase your board engagement. We wanted to start out with this poll. It looks like we got some interesting answers up here. It looks like a technology-free board meeting might be the dream. So when your board members drift off and focus is lost, they're getting snacks, they stare blankly and yawn. They don't have any objections to major decisions. That's a little concerning. They're on their phones, and they pull out their phones.
They're quiet.
See, they're reading materials unrelated to the meeting, and then they're talking over each other. So you can see that board unengagement is not a rare issue, and it's something that is a common complaint with nonprofit organizations. In fact, a 2015 study by Stanford University found that 48% of board directors felt that their fellow members were not very engaged in their work based on the time they dedicated or their responsibility to obligations. With that in mind, we're going to talk about board orientation and some continuing education tools to increase board engagement. My name is Lauren Patterson.
My name is Cqitlyn Gegen.
And my name is Nicolle Gaines. To continue with some questions to get a feel for the room, raise your hand if you participated in a board orientation, either as a member of the board or as an employee. So a good amount of people have. Keep your hand raised if you felt that orientation was effective and contributed to your engagement with the organization. Okay, so some hands didn't go back up. For those of you that raised your hand, what was something that made the orientation effective? If you'd like to share.
Shared activities.
So getting involved and doing something other than just listening.
I think the opportunity to ask specific questions too, so my understanding of the organization and trying to understand it better by asking questions and having that opportunity to do that.
So some give and take in the presentation. All right, and there are several hands that did not go back up. What is something that could have been done better at the orientation that would have made it a little bit more impactful?
Shared activities.
I think finding a way to, the shared activities, but finding a way to engage the members in learning about the organization without like reading what you've written down on this paper.
So not just regurgitating what's already
Yeah, don't read
existing.
to me because I'm a good reader.
I'll go a little bit more deep than that.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. We'll have a few more opportunities to contribute throughout the presentation to do that shared activity. Today we're going to go over first some psychological needs for engagement, materials to have at your orientation, holding the orientation itself, and then some tactics to take back to your organization for members that have already gone through orientation to increase engagement in meetings. And with that, I'll pass it off to Cqitlyn.
So, as Lauren said, we're talking today about how to use orientation as a tool to improve board engagement going forward. So first, we have to define what is necessary for your board to be engaged. We're looking at it through a psychological lens as the result of 3 key psychological needs being met, namely the needs for meaningfulness, availability, and safety. So meaningfulness is when your board member feels that they are valued and that they are making an impactful contribution to your organization. It's when they can really see the impact that they're having upon your organization's mission and they feel like they're making a good investment with their time. You can develop this through the different roles that they're assigned and making sure that they understand the connection between their roles and the overall mission of your organization. Next, there's the psychological need of safety. So safety is when your board member feels like they can share their opinions and their beliefs without them being negatively received. And so they feel like they can be open and they have a lot of trust and respect for each other. So this is this is very dependent upon the culture that you develop within your organization. And as board members and possibly executive directors, I didn't see where they went, but as board members and executive directors, you can develop the culture in your organization through your reaction when people share their opinions and just making sure that you demonstrate appreciation for their words and a mutual respect for their background. Finally, there's the psychological need of availability. That's when your board member feels that they have the time, the skills, and the energy to complete the tasks to which they have been assigned. You can help fulfill this need by making sure that they do in fact have the skills to complete the roles that they've been assigned, and helping boost their level of confidence when they perform well within your organization. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Nick.
All right, so my name is Nicolle, and I'm going to be talking to you about how orientation helps new board members, and kind of what it does, and if you do it right, what it can do. So it helps them feel engaged from the very first day, have a knowledge of the organization from the beginning, and obviously helps to fulfill the psychological needs that Cqitlyn was talking about of meaningfulness, availability, and safety. It also helps them know who is who in the organization so that they don't just see faces walking by and not know who the people that are in the organization who are on the board with them, and just helps them understand the organization as a whole better. So going on to that, we're going to talk about some orientation materials that you should present to your new board members beforehand so that they feel prepared and those psychological needs are met. So we propose a board orientation binder, which is going to be inclusive of all of the materials that you want to give to your board before the board orientation happens, so that they can read over materials, just make any notes, have their questions ready to go, and just feel prepared for the actual orientation. So there's a few sections that we propose to be included in this binder. That's going to be the background of the organization, a financial section, and a moving forward. So for the background, you want to include the mission of the organization, a history, how the organization was started and why, the bylaws of the organization, facts, and frequently asked questions, the board roles and responsibilities so that your new board members know what their role in that organization is and what is expected of them. And of course, the organizational chart of the organization, we propose to include photos with that and also their contact information so that you can reach those board members. In the financial section, you want to include the latest 990 form and any previous ones that you feel might be necessary. Also, approved budgets for the year, financial audits, and fundraising efforts that the organization does or will be doing in the future. And then in the moving forward section, you're going to want to include the agenda for the first board meeting that your new board member is going to attend, a calendar with the dates that are important to the organization, and the highlights of any major events for the year. And then finally, you're going to want to include any new learning opportunities, because we want your board orientation to kind of follow through and not just be one session, and it to be something that your board members can go back and ask you questions about. So next learning opportunities are important to follow that through. So, also we're going to include, we're going to want to include the agenda in the board orientation materials. And this is going to outline the orientation session, and this is going to include not only the names of your board members that are going to be there, but also the strategic plan for the organization, a get to know me section, and you're going to want to have this timed out for your orientation meeting, and you're going to want to have it toward the facilities so that your new board member knows where the bathroom is, where to go on the first day, where they're going to be meeting for their board orientation and future meetings. And finally, allow for some flexibility in this agenda so that your board members feel the need to ask questions throughout. They can, or if something gets derailed, things don't always happen perfectly, and you will account for that time to be included. And now I'm going to hand it off to Cqitlyn.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about how to hold the orientation. So as Nicolle was saying, we are looking at orientation as a holistic process. It's something that you need to consider before the actual orientation is held, and it's something that you should follow through with long after the event is over. As such, before you hold your orientation, in the recruitment materials that you send out, make sure that you state your mission and how you plan on impacting the community. Additionally, in this recruitment material, you should add the financial and the time dedication that your new board members should be planning on making to your nonprofit. That way they understand their expectations going in. Additionally, you want to give them their orientation binder so that they have the opportunity to look through the materials and familiarize themselves with the information So if they have any questions, they can ask you during their orientation. Okay, so orientation is going to happen at different times in your nonprofit during the cycle, which is important because it means that you need to adjust the orientation just a little bit so that your board member feels prepared for that moment in time. So, for example, if your nonprofit has one big event, the skills that you teach a new board member if they come on a month before the big event are going to be different from the skills that you're going to focus on for a new board member if they come on 6 months before the big event. So we kind of want to think of this as the difference between a fire hose and a water faucet. If you're trying to get a drink of water and you go to a fire hose, you're going to get knocked off your feet and you're going to get overwhelmed with information if all of it is thrown at you at once. So you want your orientation to be more like a water faucet. You want to allow somebody to get a glass of water and stay hydrated. When you're holding your orientation, the attendees are also very important. We recommend having your chair of the board, your executive director, and your chair of your recruitment committee attend the orientation. If your nonprofit is still a growing nonprofit and you don't have a recruitment committee, you can also have the orientation be led by the person who recruited the new board member. That way your board member has a bit of a relationship with the person leading the orientation and it'll just really help them feel more comfortable. Okay, so now we're going to go over the proposed agenda. So if you look in your folders, there's a handout with like a suggested agenda. I know I'm messing it up because you guys are all flipping through the slides, but it'll be really fun, I promise.
Is it right after those slides?
Is it in with the slides or separate?
I'm not certain. Can I look at some slides? Oh dear. Okay. Okay. So, would it appear that I lied? You guys do not have an agenda.
We can email it out to you, thank you.
Yes. Listen closely. Okay. So you can start your orientation by introducing your new board members to each other. You can also consider having a mentor or a buddy system so that your new board member has somebody that they can go to with questions that they might feel a little bit uncomfortable asking the executive director during their initial term. During this introduction, you can also have a staff directory. As Nicole was saying, we recommend having photos in the staff directory so that people can begin to associate names with pictures. And this step is really important because it's going to satisfy their psychological need of safety. It's going to help them know their coworkers and the people who are spending a lot of time so they feel like they can express themselves and their opinions and how to be well received. Next, you want to share the history and the mission of your organization. You also want to focus on the stakeholders during this section. Don't focus, or I would recommend not just focusing on the donors, but also focusing on the members of the community that your nonprofit is designed to help. Following this spirit here, you can also have somebody that your organization has helped in the community come in and share their story. This will really help get your new board member excited about the mission that they're going to help further. This is also going to satisfy their need for availability because they are going to begin to understand the role that they need to complete so they can develop the skills to complete that. And it's going to satisfy their need for meaningfulness because they're going to better understand the mission of your organization and how their role as a board member is going to help further that mission. So they're going to feel like they're making a meaningful impact and a meaningful contribution to the community. Next, you want to share the strategic plan of your board. During this time, you can also discuss the relevant financial information, and doing so is going to help your board member get a good context of what's going on in your organization and help them make decisions because they're going to understand the wider picture. Next, you want to go over your nonprofit's bylaws and procedures. You want to satisfy their need for availability because they're going to understand the role that they need to play in your organization. So going back to the fire hose versus water faucet, if you go over every single bylaw and every single procedure, it might get a little bit overwhelming, and your board member is going to forget key procedures, like how decisions are made. So if you want to focus on 3 key ones that you make sure that they walk away knowing, it can help them at the beginning of their time. Obviously, as the need arises, you will teach them the other procedures and the other bylaws. Next, you want to give your new board member a tour of the facilities. This is going to help them acquaint themselves with their surroundings and feel more comfortable on their first day. Additionally, we recommend providing flexibility for questions and having time for questions and answers at the end. As you said, one of the key points of making an orientation very engaging is allowing people to ask really specific questions that are going to help alleviate any confusion and better understand their role. This is also going to satisfy their need for safety, because in providing them an opportunity to ask questions and then hopefully receiving them well, you will help them feel like they can be themselves. As orientation is a process and not something that's done for one event, you will want to follow up after the orientation. So we recommend calling your new board member the day before their first board meeting. In case they're feeling any first day jitters, you can kind of help alleviate any stress that they might be feeling and answer any questions that might have arisen between the orientation and the first board meeting. Additionally, we recommend following up with your new board member after their first month, and then again after their first quarter with your organization. Just kind of ask how they're doing, if they have any more questions, if there's any bylaws or procedures that you need to go over once more, and just helping them feel more comfortable with your organization. We also recommend offering a time for them to provide an evaluation of your orientation. Doing so is going to help them, but it's also going to help you, because it will give you an opportunity to improve your orientation for other board members. It's going to help them though, because it's going to satisfy their need for availability and meaningfulness. It's going to satisfy their need for availability because you're essentially giving them a role in which they can't do anything but succeed. They're just sharing their opinion with you. And then it's going to satisfy their need for meaningfulness, because if you implement the recommendations that they give you, you will show them the impact that they are having upon your organization. All right, so
Now that we've talked about the materials that you'd like to have at your orientation and how to hold it, we're going to talk about how you can maintain that engagement and hopefully harness the excitement of your new members, or some tactics that you can take back to your organizations and implement at meetings with members who have already been serving their terms for a while. There are a lot of different ways that you can approach this, and I'm sure there's quite a lot of literature out there about board engagement. But we're going to focus on just a couple things that you can take home and implement with you after you're done with this conference. And the first thing is we recommend sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly of the organization. This can be done by the board chair or the executive director, but we know with nonprofit organizations, you're working hard, you're trying to do a lot of good in the community, and you want to really focus on the good that's going on. You don't want to emphasize anything that might be negative or might not be going so well. However, the fear is if I'm a board member and I'm hearing only about the good things that we're doing, then why am I really needed? Do I need to be here? Do you really need me if everything's going well? So by sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly of what's going on, you can match your weaknesses as a board and the weaknesses in the organization with the specific skill sets that your board members have. And you can pose this as, we're having some trouble with X, Y, and Z. Does anybody have an opinion on that or be able to help? For example, if you're having some issues legal or wording a legal document, you could ask a lawyer on your team. By this, board members will feel that their skills and expertise are being put to use in making a difference, that they really have an impact by being on your board. They're not just a warm body. And you can match, again, those weaknesses with the board member strengths. This encourages transparency and also creates a habit of sharing, so that when you do have some news that might not be so pretty, it doesn't sound like a crisis, it's just a habit of bringing those things up and getting them out in the open and being fully communicative with your board members. And this goes back to fulfilling all those three needs for psychological engagement. One way to do this is to share a quick state of the organization at the beginning of your board meetings. This doesn't have to be extensive or long, but especially if you're a board member who hasn't been there for the past month, or maybe you only meet once a quarter, you might not really know what's been going on with the daily operations. So just a quick catch up to say, here's what's been going on, here's what's we've been doing well, here's what's been struggling a little bit, can help your board members get back up to speed, because I'm sure they also have a lot of other things going on in their lives other than just serving on the board. An activity that you can implement to really get this conversation going is called Start, Stop, Continue. And by this, you share something that you think you should start doing, something that maybe you should stop doing because it's not been very effective or it's a drain of resources, and something that's going well that you would continue doing. Again, these can be big scale or small scale. For instance, you could say, hey, we should start doing a board orientation because we're not. Or it could be small as, maybe we don't need to print out all these copies for every meeting because it's just really a waste of time and no one's reading them. So we want to give you a chance to practice this here tonight, and we can kind of give some feedback and hear what other organizations are doing. So we'll give you a second to think about what's something you wish your organization would start doing. And anyone who would like to share, we would love to hear from you.
You mean in the context of a meeting or just larger scale, like the organization itself, or what are the parameters for this?
You can tailor it to whatever context you would like. Since we're talking about engagement in general, if you feel like there's something that you wish your organization would start doing that would help create more engagement, or you just see an area for opportunity, anything's open at this point. But depending on a certain situation, when you go back to your board meeting, you can tailor it to that context. Yeah,
So I'm really interested in this idea of this ongoing orientation. So like that within each meeting when we meet monthly or quarterly, that there's a moment, a professional learning moment for board members about how to proceed on whatever the next fundraiser is, or how do we get ready to do a strategic plan, or how do we, so I think that that's really interesting to do mini orientations or mini professional learnings throughout the year to give them the skills to be successful at whatever the board's doing next.
Right. It gives you an opportunity to refresh, get everybody back on the same page. Especially again, if you only go to your board meetings once a month, or you're not daily engaged with a nonprofit, you can kind of lose those things in the wayside of everything else that's going on in your life. So getting everybody back up to speed and having set expectations for everyone based on what they've been taught can be really helpful. Would anyone like to share something that they would like their organization to maybe start doing?
I think my organizations should start doing the orientation evaluation, because so often we don't get that type of feedback, and then we're a year down the line and there's some board members who don't even really understand what we're doing. So I think the evaluation would be really helpful, and something that no one has brought up in our organization.
That would be great, and get that feedback so you know exactly what you need to improve on. And with the ease of technology, that could be as simple as making a Google form and sending that out. It doesn't need to be an elaborate process, but giving your board members a venue for that. Whereas they might not want to step up and say, hey, you could do this differently, but if you ask, they might have an opinion that they wouldn't have shared otherwise. Moving on, is there something that you think your organization maybe should stop doing because you don't see it as being really effective or essential to the operations?
You know, I do a pretty extensive board report that's several pages long, and it's nice because it's a great historical document, but I'm not so sure how many of my board members read it. And if they do read it, I don't know how much it's impacting the work that they're doing, you know. So that's one of those things I kind of struggle with, because it is nice to have that historical perspective. It's also nice from an executive director standpoint. I know where I'm falling down, you know, that I need to, it reminds me I need to do X, Y, and Z. So that's one of the things that I think maybe we should potentially stop, is that long board report.
I look for ways to make it a little bit more efficient for you. If it's taking most of your time and not producing a lot of results, maybe there are ways that you can streamline
And
it.
more effective for the board too.
Right. And is there anything that your organization should continue doing that you think really doing well? Maybe you could apply it to other areas of your programming, or if you have something that you'd like to share, I'm sure there's other organizations in the room that would like to hear about it.
We had a staff retreat in December, and one of the things the staff wanted to do was get to know the board members more. So we now, on a monthly basis, have one staff member come in, we give them 5 minutes, they talk about what they do in the organization. It has helped everybody on the board to understand better what's going on. And I think it's a great idea, it's a staff idea. We also try every other month, we have a staff and board members who can make it lunch.
That's great.
Wait, what was the lunch thing? Say that again, the lunch thing?
Every other month, we get together with the board and the staff. Now, we don't have a giant board, but there's 10 of us.
Sure.
And the staff is small with Children's First too, but it's nice. Everybody feels comfortable with each other.
Right.
And everybody in the staff understands our job is connected to theirs. You don't work for us. We all work together for the same purpose.
That's a really good idea. Would anyone else like to share?
Our organization is really small, but I've noticed since we've started debriefing together and keep making a document just on a Google Doc after any event or program we run, that it's been very helpful moving forward, just to remember without wasting a lot of time figuring out what we've done that worked and what hasn't
Yeah,
in those activities.
essentially doing this, but for every event. Well, thank you everyone for contributing. I'm sure the other organizations like to hear. To summarize what we've talked about tonight, there are 3 key components to engagement: meaningfulness, availability, and safety. We recommend preparing a binder for your board members to take home before the orientation so that they already have a basis for knowledge when they come to your organization and they come with questions. Have a set agenda and try to stick pretty closely to it so the board members know what to expect and the time parameters. And then after orientation, keep board members engaged by sharing what's going well, what's not going so well, and matching their talents to your specific weaknesses. You're going to get a ton of information tonight, for sure. We recommend, if you'd like to delve a little bit more deep into this or just have it sink in a little bit more, there's this YouTube video that's a TED Talk that we really enjoyed by Chris Grunder about modern nonprofit board governance, passion is not enough. We also, you'll see on those slides, have all of our references, so if you want to go even deeper into it, there's some great sources on there and websites that have plenty of nonprofit resources. Thank you for everyone for coming.
Thank you.